Hi there, everybody. Mike Perez with Mastering the Young Band again. In this video, I want to talk about, for your second and third year players, a few of the first steps to get your kids recognizing intonation and tuning. And then for your beginners, I want to talk about, after you've taught them their embouchure, their playing, their first sounds, how to get their first 5 notes and some exercises to use with that. But first, let's talk about second and third year players and intonation and tuning. So the absolute first step with your kids is they have to be able to play a concert F for 8 counts on a steady sound. What I tell my kids is we use our clip-on microphones and tuners. I tell them we got to get your sound on 0. And so we work on that a lot, just getting their sound to start on 0, stay on 0, and end on 0. And there's lots of things we talk about that can cause your sound to not be on 0. We talk about tuning slides, obviously. We talk about mouth shape for brass. We talk about reed strength of the reed players, etc. So that's step 1. And it takes a while to get your kids to get really steady concert F0. The next step is teaching your students how to manipulate the pitch. And so the different instruments, showing them how you manipulate the pitch from 0 to the left side of their tuner. So a lot of times what I'll do, I'll demonstrate on flute. I'll have the kids turn their tuners on, and I'll have them unplug their microphone. That way they hear my sound. And then what I teach them is to bend the note from 0 to the left side of their tuner, the flat side, and then back. I try not to tell them to go too far, because as you know with brass, if they go too far, it's going to change partials. So I tell them to just start at 0, go about to where about the 3rd or 4th dot is on the tuner. On my tuners, there's dots on there. We just talk about go to about the 3rd dot flat. So I'll demonstrate it for them. So I'll play it. And I usually demonstrate it on flute. It's just a timbre that students can hear really well. And then they watch it on their tuner. I'll do it a couple of times. I'll give them instrument-specific directions. So flutes, rolling in, talking about the brass, opening the jaw, a little bit on the center of the lips too, but not too much. And then we just practice. We practice going, okay, here we go, everybody, 0, and they just follow my hand. We go, da. Again, play, da. And we just do that several times for the kids to get used to manipulating the pitch from 0 to the flat side and then back up. I also try to train them to not go too fast. You get kids that want to go da, or kids that go too far, da, and they change pitch, and by the time they get up, they can't get it back to 0. They have to be able to do it in that about 8 counts, get it down and back up. That way they have enough air. So that's the first step. And so when I'm first introducing the manipulating the pitch part, we actually do down the row where students do that bended note down and then back up. So we'll go, okay, trumpets today, you're gonna do your note bending, and we'll have everybody unplug their tuners. I'll go, okay, first student, ready, go, and they play. And then we talk about it. How did they do? Did they get it? Did they move it to the left side? Did they go flat? Did they bring it back up? And we just talk about it. And each student gets a try as we go around the band, down the row style, to show us that they can manipulate pitch. So that is the next step. You got the straight count on 0, concert F. Step 2 is manipulating pitch. And I highly recommend you teach them to go flat first and take a lot of time just getting them comfortable understanding how that concept works. Then the third step is perhaps the most important and also the toughest one for students to develop. And that's actually hearing the beats, hearing the waves in the sound when they go out of tune. This one, same thing, I usually demonstrate it on flute. On my harmony director, I'll drone a concert F. And then I'll show them, okay, I'm gonna do the bended note, 0 to the triangle or the 3rd dot, and then back. And then I ask them what they hear. So I'll do this. And I'll ask a couple kids, what did you hear? And inevitably, kids will say, I heard like these waves kind of sounding things. Yeah, and I usually just call them waves. I usually don't call them beats. I go, yeah, there are these waves. I created waves by manipulating my pitch to the left. Wah, 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 wah. And when I go back to 0, the waves disappear. And then I'll show them again so they can hear those waves. And then I have them practice individually. And by the way, I do sectionals in my school, which I'll talk about in a later video. Sectionals are the best place to work on this bending note individually. However, I also do it in my ensemble. So in my top band right now, we're early in the school year, our down the row for tuning is students do a bended note exercise. We just go down the row, I drone a concert F. By the way, if you don't have a harmony director, one of the awesome things about this device is you can get different instruments, sounds on there, and the whole purpose of these sounds are to be able to hear pitch really well, the overtones of the different instruments. So when you select, like that was a flute sound I droned, you could hear how easily you could hear the beats compared to like an organ sound or a trumpet sound. So if you don't have a harmony director, I highly recommend getting it. The new HD 300 is more reasonably priced. It's about $700 compared to, I think they used to be $1,200. So anyway, we'll go down the row. I'll drone a concert F, and then each kid will go. And I have the entire band unplug their microphones. One kid goes, they bend their pitch, and I ask the band, did they create waves? Yes or no? And they say yes or no. And then the second question is the most important one. It's the one that takes a long time to learn. I'll ask the kid that did the tuning. I said, did you get rid of the waves? And I would say about half to 2/3, maybe even 3/4 of the kids, they're gonna give you a, I don't know. It's amazing how long it takes kids to be able to know when they lock it in. And the funny thing is, a lot of times they did lock it in, but they didn't know it. And you have to talk to them about that and go, you got rid of the waves. What happened was your sound disappeared into the sound of the drone. So you actually did do it. Sometimes kids that are really struggling when they're bending the pitch back up and they can't tell if they can hear the waves, sometimes I'll give them a visual and I'll show them that there's still a wave. And then when they get it, I like smile, I go, yes, that's it, that's it, that's it. And then we talk about it. And it's amazing how just give them that visual sometimes helps them to hear it if you give them that visual representation. That third step, you have to be really, really patient on. You have to make sure your kids actually hear the waves. And I spend weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. I actually have a ledger where I track the kids that I know are hearing it and the ones that don't have it yet. And once everybody's pretty consistent, then I move on to other steps of tuning, which I'll talk about later. But that third step with the drone, by the way, their tuners are off for that. They're no longer using the tuner. It's all about hearing the waves and beats, okay? Okay, so next thing, for beginners, I wanted to talk about kind of next steps. So here's the point where my beginners are. They have really solid embouchures. They look very good. They know their first 5 notes for the most part. They know the note names and the fingerings. Some of my struggling kids are still working on the note names and fingerings. They're getting confused. Next week's video, I'll talk a little bit about how I help kids learn their note names and fingerings. So they know those first 5 notes, and we play it a lot. I play, you play. Eventually they have to play something. And I don't like just transitioning them to the book once they know their first 5 notes. So for those of you that aren't familiar, I have created a warm-up for first and second year band, even third year band for some schools, depending on how much you have your kids. Here's what I want you to think of my essential foundations. This is essentially a warm-up and technique book for your first and second year players. Just playing out of the method book does not give them the technique and repetition that they need. The Foundations for Superior Performance book is fantastic. However, it's really best for second and third year players. So, for beginners, it's not really appropriate. So what I've done is I've created this Essential Foundations book, and what I use, so once my students know their first 5 notes, the first thing we play is this first 5 note sheet. And if you can see it there, what it is basically is it's their first 5 notes, whole note, rest, nothing profound, but it's I play, you play, and that way they can read the music of what we've been playing in class. So they can see all of those whole notes. Then you'll see the next step is getting them to transition from their concert F, then the concert E flat. And again, we note name it, we go I play, you play at tempo 72. So for instance, we'll go, let me set this at 72. G, F, touching the rest. F, E, touch. we'll say the whole thing going through, and this gets them used to transitioning from their first 5 notes playing it to actually reading it. Brass players will also do a repetition where we say their positions. I'm a huge advocate of your brass players learning positions as opposed to their vowel fingerings. So for instance, a trumpet, we call that 6th position. We call that 4th position. We don't say 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. We use the positions from the trombone, and it's amazing how fast that is for your brass players, okay? So this transitions them from those first 5 notes. Once they get pretty good with this page where they know their first 5 notes, they know the note names, they know the fingerings, they can transition to their different fingerings. Then what I do, that's when I start teaching them their articulation. And we start working on their articulation. And then there's another exercise in here called the first 5 notes set 2. And you can see here, it's whole notes, half, quarter, quarter, half, quarter. So it's just like the other warm-up set, but now they're adding their articulation in. Later in this, you can see they're going, or this is clarinet book, G, G, F, F, touch. F, F, E, E. So they're walking down, but now they're adding more articulation in. Once my beginners can play this first 5 notes set 2 to about this number 7 here, that's when I know it's time. We can start going into the method book and transitioning in. Now, I use my essential foundations every day for my beginner classes and for about half of the first quarter with my 2nd-year players. But that's how I transition students from a purely aural approach of just playing their first 5 notes, essential foundations first 5 notes, and then first 5 notes set 2. Then that's where I transition them into their book. And it's amazing. They open that book, they know how to read it, they already know the fingerings, they know the note names, and the comment I hear from my kids is, "Whoa, Mr. Perez, the book is easy. This is so easy." And it's like, yeah, it is. And that's my goal, is to make it easy for them. Now, we all see our beginners for different amounts of time. I'm in my 7th week with my beginners, but we have a summer program that counts as part of that. Then we had this gap of time, then I see them again. So for me, my beginners, I'm just starting the book, and it's about the 7th week of school. So you want to be careful. Your 7th week may not be the same as mine, depending on contact time. But that's how long I wait for the book. I wait for quite a while before I get them into that. So if you're interested in my Essential Foundations book, if you go to mikeperezband.com, you'll see a lot of samples and more of what's in this method book. There is a conductor score as part of it. Now you've noticed I've had mine bound by a parent volunteer, and then I have all the exercises here. It does come as PDFs for you to print and to combine as you see fit. So anyway, I hope you find that useful. Try some of those techniques with your band, and have a great one.